So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm the mayor of Richfield, Maria Gonzalez. I hope all of you and your families are staying healthy and safe and as low stress as possible right now during the holiday season and COVID. But I just want to welcome everybody to our meeting, our very first meeting together. And just give a brief welcome and some context, and then our staff will continue with the next part of our meeting. But the city of Richfield has been considering organized hauling for many years now, and even several generations of councils, actually. And over the past several years, our city council, our staff, and our community have really strengthened and grown our commitment to environmental sustainability as a city in the policies and the practices that we have here in Richfield. So a few examples of what we've done to enact that have included our Sustainability Commission, launching our Climate Action Plan, and making sure, we're putting solar panels on our buildings. We have electrical cars. We have, we started a great pilot for organics collection that was really received positively in the community. And as you know, you can see this across the country, but this has happened in Richfield as well. We have a strong level of interest and I would say holding us to be accountable from our residents around what we are doing to reduce our carbon footprint and be a more sustainable city, from our students to our residents alike. So that's kind of the bigger picture context of what we've been experiencing the past several years, but more recently as well. And that's why we really think that right now is a great time to be considering organized hauling. So that's a little context. I welcome you, and we really look forward to working with our consortium of haulers here in Richfield to have a strong partnership and come to a conclusion that can really serve all of us, and first and foremost, our residents best. So I'll pass it over to our staff. I believe our city manager is next.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. I just want to talk briefly about the intent of the meeting today, lay out the agenda for folks that are going to view this from home, and then also ask you to introduce yourselves briefly. I know we've got a lot on the meeting, but I think it would be helpful for all of us to just introduce ourselves. So our intent today, as you know, this process is laid out in statutes, and today is one of the first steps in that process. And it is for us to meet and confer. And so that is what we're doing today. We're going to start out with staff doing a PowerPoint presentation on the reasons that Richfield is considering organizing solid waste collection. These reasons are mostly been compiled with resident feedback, but as well as observations from council members and staff. Staff will also be presenting several priorities for an organized collection system and contract. And again, that's primarily been driven from resident feedback. And then following the PowerPoint slides, we'd like each council member to just talk about their observations and their goals for this process and what constituents have shared with them. And then we'd also like to hear from haulers and their feedback. And then that's also a time for discussion and questions. So if you could all just introduce yourselves, let's start out with council, and then we can have the haulers introduce themselves, and then finally staff. And then the PowerPoint will be Recreation Services Director Amy Markle and Sustainability Specialist Rachel Lindholm. And you can just, after the introductions, Amy, you can just take it from there. And is Council Member Garcia on the phone if she wants to go first? I don't know if she's joined yet. So Councilmember Troutman.
You're muted still, Councilmember Troutman.
Am I? Oh, there we go. Hey, good morning, everybody. Councilmember Simon Troutman. And what were we doing? Anything other than just introducing ourselves, City Manager Rodriguez?
Just introducing yourselves. And Councilmember-elect Sean Hayford O'Leary, you should introduce yourself as well, please.
So I wasn't sure if Simon was going to say more. Sean Hayford O'Leary, I'll be succeeding Edwina in January, and I imagine this will be one of the first items to talk about in the new year or vote more formally on.
Councilmember Whalen from Ward 3.
And I already introduced myself, but I'm Mayor Maria Reagan Gonzalez.
And I don't think that Councilmember Garcia has joined us yet, so if the haulers want to briefly introduce themselves next.
Hello, my name is Rocky Barini. I'm the sales manager for commercial and residential at Curbside Waste. We're in Brooklyn Park, and we've been around since 2020.
Hi, I'm Bev Mattison with Republic Services. I am the Municipal Services Manager.
Good morning, my name's Matt Herman. I'm the Business and Public Relations Manager for Randy's.
Hello, I'm Jason Hartman. I'm the Public Sector Sales Rep for Waste Management.
Good morning. This is Julie Ketchum. I'm the Public Affairs Manager for Waste Management.
Good morning, Micah Hamstra, Legal Counsel with Waste Management.
Alexa Fang, Vice President at Aspen Waste Systems.
I believe we have Derek, Drew, Ken, and Thor left. You all can unmute yourselves now. I don't know if that permission was accessible before.
Oh, sorry. This is Thor from Aspen, Chief Operating Officer.
Thanks, Thor.
Jared Holman, Operations Manager, Minnesota, Aspen Waste Systems.
I think just Drew is left. Drew, are you able to unmute yourself?
Bev, do you want to introduce Drew?
Yeah, I will. Drew is our Operations Manager for Republic Services. He's having a little technical difficulty. I just got a text from him, but he is here.
All right, very good. Thank you. And then our staff.
Sure. My name is Rachel Lindholm. I've been emailing with pretty much all of you, and I'll be the primary point of contact for the organized collection effort. Sustainability specialist, by the way.
And my name's Amy Markle. I'm the Recreation Services Director.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Teachin. I'm the City Attorney for the City of Richfield.
I think that's everyone. Was there anybody else that we missed? Their guests, our staff?
Kelly Wynn is our Senior Administrative Aide, and she's taking notes for us today.
All right. Well, I'm going to share our PowerPoint, and if we missed anyone, feel free to jump in as I queue up the presentation. So hopefully everyone can see that. We are going to provide a short PowerPoint, and then our council will also have some remarks afterwards. So Today, as we know, we're coming together looking at organized collection, and this is our initial meeting with our licensed residential haulers. And the City of Richfield has several guiding principles and plans that are helping steer and prioritize this work. First and foremost, we were looking at equity for our residents and affordability for services. We are looking at creating a more sustainable community and pushing our sustainability efforts and goals forward, and also improving our quality of life throughout the city. And we have two plans in place that really help prioritize this work. The first one is our Climate Action Plan, which was adopted in 2020. And specifically, our Goal 5 talks about organized collection. And we are looking to organize curbside solid waste, recycling, and organics collection by 2022, and to increase accessibility and equity and achieve environmental benefits. The other plan that helps steer this work is our 2040 comprehensive plan, which also outlines and addresses our sustainability initiatives. So when we look at the why we would want to do this as a city and as a community, our really highest priorities are equity, to access to waste management services and pricing and resident protection, and all the environmental benefits that can go with it. We want to ensure that residents have adequate trash, recycling, and organic services. We want to improve hauler reporting systems and safety with less trucks on our roads and more standardized routes. We want to improve that standardize of service in options and values of services, increase our recycling and organics collection and waste reduction rates. And we'll get into some details, but Richfield has a lot of room for improvement when it comes to our rate of recycling. We want to lessen environmental impacts, including wear and tear on our roads, emissions, noise pollution, minimize the disruption to residents and impacts, also minimize the impacts on licensed haulers. We'd like to optimize administrative efficiency, both for haulers and the city, and overall create public education and awareness that's more uniform and comprehensive. So specifically, when we get into the economic reasons, we like to improve the value of services, increasing equity and lessening the economic burden on our marginalized populations. We have an incredibly diverse community. We want to ensure that our communities where English is a second language, our seniors, lower fixed income residents have quality access to services. And with increased efficiency will hopefully equate to a decrease in costs. We would like easy to understand, straightforward pricing as well. We'd like to improve standardization of service options. With a citywide contract, we'd be able to coordinate services much more efficiently. And we want to ensure that all residents have proper waste management services. And there's not such a wide discrepancy in costs, often coming even from the same haulers. Some of the environmental reasons why is we'd like to reduce environmental impacts, pollution and litter coming out of trucks and blowing around. We'd like to improve safety with less frequent stops and more predictable routes. We hear this quite a bit from our residents. Less noise and air pollution with fewer trucks on the road. We want to also decrease road wear and tear with the number of trucks and speed. Not on the list, but another one is just decrease the amount of illegal dumping we see in our community. We have seen everything from mattresses, computers, TV, weekly garbage being dropped off in parks and other spaces in the city, and having proper services across the community will hopefully help decrease the amount of illegal dumping we're seeing. There's also social and education impacts why we are pursuing this. One is to minimize the disruption to residents and hopefully increase the quality of life. We like to increase the rates of recycling, composting, and waste reduction. We are at the bottom 4 cities in Hennepin County for the rate of recycling. We're number 39 out of 42. And we are one of 2 cities in the county that is not organized for recycling collection, which has resulted in lower participation rate and less consistent recycling education for residents, which overall has negatively affected our recycling efforts. We'd also like to enhance coordination among government agencies. Hopefully this will aid in meeting the county mandates, state waste goals, city sustainability goals, and just overall our solid waste goals. We'd also like to improve hauler reporting system, and that will help make the annual mandated reporting more efficient. Hopefully it will be quite accurate as well. We'd also like to increase public education and awareness about proper waste disposal and reduction, and hopefully optimize staff and hauler administrative efficiencies as well.
So we have come up with a list, like City Manager Rodriguez mentioned, based primarily on residential feedback, as well as some staff observations as well about priorities that the city would like to achieve in an organized system. This is a very tech-heavy slide, and I do want to note that a much more pleasing visual document was emailed out to participants. If you did not receive that document, I'm more than happy to send it along. So please reach out to me. I will be going through them now, and then as noted before, after council speaks up, we will be open for a discussion, which includes these priorities. So for the must achieve list, we've heard a lot of feedback from residents about what they'd like to see in an organized collection system, and a lot of that has been based on experiences in an open system that they would obviously like to, have better communities, customer service, more consistent and prompt customer service with haulers, resolving issues that residents experience, whether it's missed pickups or understanding what should go in the recycling, things like that. In addition to that education, we do want to increase education and materials that are distributed in languages other than English. We do have a large Spanish-speaking population, as well as other populations in Richfield that do not speak English as a first language, and really increasing the education for waste reduction, for recycling, for organics education, things like that. We want to provide stable, equitable, and uniform service rates for all residents. We have noticed in our limited sampling, and we hope to do a little more with Richfield residents on their bills, that we have several residents with the same hauler and same cart size who are paying wildly different rates for service. And so part of this is about making sure that all residents are paying equal value for the services that they're receiving. We do want to reduce residential rates with the efficiencies gained from organized collection route benefits. So making sure that those benefits are being passed on to the residents, by having a hauler stop at every house on a block in the neighborhood. We know that there are efficient from those routes. And so residents seeing the benefits, it's a big plus for an organized system. We want to promote greater waste reduction by providing financial incentives based on cart size. Obviously, this is currently common practice for haulers to have different pricing structures for carts, but to really make sure that waste reduction is emphasized by those prices, and making sure that rates for those different size containers are substantial when possible would be great. We want to, obviously, with an organized system, have only one hauler service all residences on a block. This does get into details. We will get into details later with how this would work with market share distribution, and that really gets into the nitty gritty. making sure that, all blocks can be serviced by one hauler, but, as much as possible, making sure that we are achieving that goal of an organized system. And then creating routes that, as Director Markle pointed out, realize the environmental benefits of pollution reduction, truck reduction, minimizing fuel usage, which is environmental, but it's also has obviously safety benefits as well. And that's been one of the largest, pieces of feedback from residents. A lot of them have voiced their concern for how fast the trucks go around their neighborhood. And I think with a lot of people, working from home, learning from home, just being at home in general during the pandemic, this has been something more residents are noticing more than usual. And so, making sure that we're creating that safe community where residents are comfortable letting their kids play outside on trash day and things like that. Which is an actual, piece of feedback that I've gotten about residents being concerned about that. So making sure that we're just, building the best community that we can through an organized system. So then continued, as Director Markle mentioned, obviously providing these services to all households, providing additional services like yard waste options, or bulky item disposal, things like that residents might want to take advantage of, but certainly not every resident would desire to have. Providing arrangements for, an additional service like garage or driveway pickup for residents who qualify for that service. Providing options for residents to share service that our city code currently permits that. Maintaining Richfield's current collection day schedule. This is part of minimizing disruption for residents and hopefully minimizing disruption for haulers as well. Making sure that residents are aware, your collection day is going to stay the same. Your cart and your hauler might be changing, but still put your trash out every Thursday morning or, whatever the day might be. And then, as Director Markle mentioned, expanding reporting and communication between haulers and the city. There's a lot of efforts for this piece in particular. I get a lot of, separate from organized collection, I get a lot of feedback or residents reaching out, wanting the city to get involved in their interactions with their hauler or to try and get an answer from a hauler about one thing or another. And obviously, since it is such a private, transaction at this point between a resident and their hauler, the city doesn't usually have much of a role in it, or I don't, as a staff member, usually much of a person to connect with at a specific hauler to help the resident solve their issue. So by having the haulers communicate more with the city and communicate more with residents, I'm hoping that not only can we reduce contamination, decrease missed pickups, but we can also improve education and really kind of strengthen the relationship between these three parties. And then lastly, like I mentioned before, minimizing the disruption to residents with the transition. This is a very big priority for Richfield as we go through this process, especially as we talk about all the logistics with things like cart exchange and billing. There's a lot of questions that residents have for how this process might work. And so we're trying to be as transparent and upfront as we can about communication and saying, here, these things might have to get worked out during negotiations. We don't have an answer for you at this point, but here are options, or here's how other cities have done it, or things like that. And so I think all of these priorities really have come from residents who are, noticing more trucks on the roads, who are noticing that their rates are being raised and, they don't want to shop around, or have noticed that, they're not having great customer service experiences or things like that, aren't getting answers to their questions, and know that they want to do these things. They want to recycle more. They want to have curbside organics. They want to reduce their waste, and really trying to bring all the pieces together. So those are our must-achieve priorities. And very much a shorter list of achieve, and this is just currently, but it would be nice as we go through this process, if there is the ability for residents to communicate with a local customer service representative. Obviously, different haulers have different customer service setups, and we recognize that is very, depends on a hauler size and where their locations are and things like that. But even to have the ability, like I was saying before, to have a city staff be able to contact local representatives to get faster resolution to issues or faster answers to questions or things like that would be great. Providing additional services for obviously with additional costs. This is separate from the optional services of yard waste or bulky item collection or things like that. But just would like to achieve having additional services like extra bag collection or returning to pick up carts that were not set out. Things that isn't necessarily a regular service, and it's not necessarily something that would be covered by an additional section of a proposal. And then as far as timeline goes, this process is very much in flux and very much dependent on the preceding steps of the process. And there are a lot of external factors and external events going on in the world today, so it's kind of hard to forecast how this process and timeline might look for the city of Richfield and for this consortium. But we are looking to have a submission of a draft proposal in early 2021 to then have implementation if the proposal is approved and by council and the community and everything, implementation in summer or early fall, obviously avoiding that winter not being a good time to exchange carts. And we want to have organics collection before the Hennepin County mandate of January 1st, 2022. So like I said, big disclaimer, we don't necessarily know how this process is going to work out, but this is our definitely a would like to achieve priority for Richfield. So then briefly, this is a little bit out of order because obviously we're not done with the discussion yet. But I did want to say for next steps, we will be scheduling negotiation meetings soon, obviously to start after Thanksgiving and everything this week. And then time will be provided for haulers to meet with each other, separate from the negotiation meetings with the city. And we've yet to figure out the details. Obviously, no city has organized during the pandemic and had to figure that out virtually. So we will be in contact with how that might work in conjunction with the negotiation meetings, or having an hour before or after, things like that. And like I said before, please reach out to me if you have any questions or if you would like to change your point of company contact. I sent out the agenda and the priorities document to the person that I have been interacting with the most from your company. So if you would like to change that, please just let me know. It's not a problem at all. So I think that is the last slide of the presentation, and I will pass it back to Mayor Reagan Gonzalez to introduce each council member to kind of share what they're noticing in the community with an open system and what residents have communicated to them about what they'd like to see in an organized system.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachel, and thank you to Director Markle for that presentation and overview. So as we go and share the perspectives of each council member and what we're hearing from the community, I'm going to start with Council Member Garcia, and then Council Member Whalen, then Council Member Troutman, then Council Member-elect Hayford O'Leary, and I will wrap up just to make it nice and smooth for us. So Council Member Garcia, are you on the line?
She might have to unmute as well.
If you are on, Councilmember Garcia, you're muted. We'll just wait a few seconds here. Okay, I believe she is not on. So why don't we just start with Councilmember Whalen, and if Councilmember Garcia jumps on, she can jump in.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, most of this is going to be repeat of what's already been said, but I've been on council almost 2 years now, and when I first ran, was asking some pretty open-ended questions, and the desire for organized collection was by far the most frequent request people had, of just to a question of like, what would you like to see happen in Richfield? By far, the the first thing people mention is just reducing the number of trucks for safety, for noise, for people talk about road wear, but I think that's them coming up with reasons. I think the primary impacts are the safety and noise. Talking about the uncertainty around prices, the need to negotiate. I know I personally, we just had our hauler like try and up our bill by like $40 a quarter and had to go back and say no, and could negotiate that down. And I'm sure they did that to many other people who didn't know they could call and say that, or don't speak English to be able to do that very well. I've talked to a number as a fairly new resident. I've only lived here about 5 years now, 4 or 5 years. And talking to other new residents, when you first move into town, it's kind of frustrating of like, wait, what do you mean this? Like, I have to figure this out myself and go set it up and figure out the cart transition that, I mean, most people, if they're coming here from a different city, they likely have come from somewhere with organized collection. And then especially recently with the drop-off organics, people now are really interested in the curbside organics for sure. I think the main concerns that have come up as the conversation has now started around making this transition, the biggest one is price, the uncertainty around that. And so I'm fully confident we can, for all the reasons mentioned, that we can get to a place where the vast majority of people are paying less than what they have been, and that's not just going to be a hit to the haulers, that you're actually going to be able to save money too. Specific concerns around the billing process, which seems kind of 50-50 if people are like, I really want this to all be on my utility bill, or I really don't want to pay for this through the city and definitely want to keep just working directly with my hauler. But some requests around that, or just concerns about that transition. Other transition concerns specifically, like, am I going to get charged if we need to switch which bins we have? The customer service piece is huge. People seem to think that if they don't, and this I've heard concerns about all of the haulers, and so this is not attacking any single one, but people currently feel like their customer service option is to threaten to leave and switch. And that they feel like they have to do that in order to get the rate they want or the customer service they want, or a problem addressed. So I think getting to a place where we can have options for people to reach out and resolve issues without with that being a little more of a cooperative conversation. And then the last thing just being that people are definitely, I know we're not even proposing this, but people are definitely not interested in a one-size-fits-all service. And so maintaining the options around what size bins or how many, questions about like how often do bins get picked up, questions about yard waste, and about the bulky items piece. So that's some of my experience and what I've heard generally, and now specifically as we talk about the switch.
Thank you, Councilmember Whalen. Councilmember Troutman, do you want to share a few thoughts? Looks like you're still muted.
There we go. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councilmember Whalen. I think I would echo everything that Councilmember Whalen said. I think over the last number of years that I've served, the consensus has only grown stronger. That this is a direction that the community is interested in going. The reason, similar to Councilmember Whalen, have the number of trucks is probably the number one issue, but there I think multiple motivations in terms of priorities. I think for the folks that are excited about this transition, the concerns that they would have would be making sure that they have the right option and the cost sensitivity. For folks that are more anxious about this, I think cost sensitivity is a high priority. The concern that they'll lose options or choices are a concern, and I think overall, with folks that are excited and with folks that are anxious, but I think especially folks that are anxious, the opportunity for disinformation and a lack of information and confusion and limited communication would be both the cause of anxiety and a potential solution to the extent that we can all collaborate and communicate not just what's happening, but the path forward and what's going to happen in a way that residents can be both engaged and just have a sense of some sense of certainty and less ambiguity about the path moving forward. I think that would serve our residents really well. And well, no, maybe I'll just leave my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Troutman. Councilmember-elect Hayford O'Leary.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm aware that particularly this year, as more people are working from home, we're becoming a lot more aware of the truck situation that we maybe didn't notice when we were out at the workplace. But I certainly have heard complaints about the number of trucks. I live on an alley, particularly those who live on alleys are aware of the burden of being blocked in, not able to get out of their garage, the noise, the danger to children, and so on. So I think there is broad support for this. Like Councilmember Whalen, I think one of the biggest concerns I've heard is if my hauler isn't responsive to my needs, what do I do about it? You know, is the city going to go to bat for me if I have a customer service issue when I don't have a choice to leave them? So I hope that particularly if we are in a situation where we're deciding the hauler is continuing to handle billing or whatever, that at least the city has a point person that if there's a real issue, they have the ability to respond to customer issues or stand up or provide a sort of source of appeal if there's a real problem. Things that I've also heard a desire from is large item pickup, whether that's something that we include as maybe a couple times a year or once a year in a base cost like Bloomington has, or we do it as an add-on service. I've heard envy of both Bloomington and Minneapolis's options for that. And I think that becomes a code and sort of neighborhood aesthetics issue. We've all seen mattresses and couches out at the curb that sit there for weeks, getting wet. And if we can avoid that, that would be good. My personal priorities, I want it to be affordable and practical for households. I'm hopeful that it will be cheaper on average, and I think we can achieve that. Again, that large item pickup. Another thing, it sounds like it's already baked in, but I think it's really critical that we have organics as part of the base cost. I don't want us to have a situation where we're financially incentivizing a worse environmental choice, which if we were to charge separately for it, we're making it cheaper to throw stuff in the landfill, and I don't want us to do that. Similarly, I want us to allow small cart sizes and provide an appropriate discount if you're choosing to do a smaller cart size for general trash. I would also like us to discuss including yard waste in the base fee. I know some cities do that, like Minneapolis does, St. Paul doesn't. Given that the vast majority of Richfield is small lots where it's not practical to keep your yard waste on site, I think everybody needs some solution, but I realize some people they like to bring their yard waste to sites or whatever. So that would be something to look into, but not something that I think is essential. And then finally, I mentioned this to Rachel previously, but it would be nice to at least have some sense. I understand this is not what we'll be voting on and dealing with immediately, but some path towards getting organics recycling in multifamily housing, since a large portion of our community won't be covered by what we're doing in this process.
Great. Oh, Rachel.
Just quickly on Sean's point, we are all aware of the difference between residential and commercial hauling, and Sean knows that too. So I did just want to point out, this is just a future goal, and we have a lot of future solid waste goals. And so thank you, Sean, for bringing that up.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and thank you, Councilmember-elect Hayford O'Leary. I'll wrap us up. It looks like Councilmember Garcia might be feeling a little ill and won't be able to join us today. But if she ends up joining on, just speak up, Councilmember Garcia, if you're here. I'll wrap us up, and then I believe City Manager Rodriguez wanted to share a few things as well. But I think the council members have done an excellent job of sharing kind of the more granular things that we're interested in, whether it's affordability, getting less wear and tear on our city roads, environmental issues, providing more flexibility and options for our residents, and making sure that we have that at the end of the day, we're producing less waste and reducing that carbon footprint. This is a topic that each one of us hears so much about in our community. Honestly, I used to work for the city in our public health department, and when I ran for office in 2016, it was not something that was on my radar as a city employee. And as I campaigned, it became one of the most important issues. And honestly, I was just very surprised to hear that. I think we have a community base that is very conscious of our impact on the environment, and this is something that folks care about. And we get a lot of questions like, "What? We don't understand why we do our hauling in this way. Can we get more options? And what are ways to be more sustainable?" So I just want to, instead of reiterating these specific points that our council members and our staff have already gone over, I just want to let the haulers know, we are a small city. We pride ourselves on being very nimble and adaptable and working with our community partners and our residents to figure out options that work best for everyone. And I think in this situation, we can continue to do the same. And so we appreciate your flexibility and your support to work with our residents and our council and our staff to figure out a way that we can provide quality services, more consistent services that are affordable, and at the end of the day, really do help our city reduce the amount of waste we produce. If you look at what Director Markle had shared with us, it is pretty dire and sad how we are really not doing a great job in Richfield with our waste and our recycling, and we need to do a much better job. And this is really going to help us do that. So we look forward to working with all of you. And again, we pride ourselves in being flexible, nimble, and small in ways that really bring benefit to all of our partners and first and foremost, our residents. So we look forward to doing that with you on this topic as well. City Manager Rodriguez, I heard you wanted to share a couple things.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say, I think we have a bit of a roadmap here, and I referenced that earlier because the process is laid out in state statute, and a few communities have gone through this process. At the same time, I think that some of to continue with the roadmap analogy, some of those roads traveled have been pretty bumpy, and Richfield is trying to do this in a much smoother fashion. We are certainly thinking about that on our end. And I'm hopeful that the haulers will also share with us what they think could lead to a more smooth process. And then sustainability specialist Lindholm, I think, has a few thoughts, and then we very much do want to hear from you.
Thank you, City Manager Rodriguez. I just wanted to kind of wrap everything up before we went into more of our discussion section by sharing a little bit of how we are involving the community and interacting with the community throughout this process. I think that's important for haulers to hear about how residents are sharing feedback and things like that. So besides the traditional, emailing or calling and sharing that feedback, we will be having a few what we're calling listening and learning sessions with the community. And obviously all of our engagement is virtual, for the foreseeable future. So these online sessions will be WebEx meetings like this one is, where community members will join and learn a little bit about the process and kind of get their questions answered about, perhaps misconceptions or just if they're, about a specific aspect of the organized system, or they just want to know what's happening with their cart, things like that. And then more of a Q&A style as well, and feedback session, where we can learn more about what residents would like to see in an organized system. So we're really trying to get, as much transparency and education and communication out there as possible. that's something that's really important to Richfield and to Richfield residents. And I just wanted to end by saying I've had really great communication with the haulers that are licensed in Richfield so far, specifically talking about all the residential ones. I've had the opportunity to speak to a lot of different representatives from companies, whether it's because residents need help, you know, and usually the city doesn't have much of a role in helping out, but we try to do what we can. Or if it's just, you know, talking to haulers for annual reporting or things like that. And I just want to say thank you for all being such a great group already. And it makes me excited for this process to work with you all. So thanks. And with that, I think we can open it up for discussion or feedback from haulers.
Thank you, Rachel. Now we've been speaking this whole time, almost an hour, 45 minutes. So we have more than an hour to have discussions, questions, answer your concerns, and have a fruitful conversation. So if anyone wants to jump in, please do so.
You should have the ability to unmute yourselves now. So.
Hi, this is Rocky Barini over at Curbside Waste. What kind of plans did you have associated with multifamily dwellings?
Thanks, Rocky. That's a great question. So as Councilmember-elect Hayford O'Leary mentioned, like that's definitely the organics piece that he specifically mentioned is very much a future goal. You know, we have other goals in our climate action plan that deal with improving, you know, single stream recycling at multi-family units and things like that. So it's more of a tiered approach to kind of, you know, reducing contamination in general and starting with recycling and going to organics and things like that. That is not, just to clarify, that's not what we're looking at with organized residential collection. I think it just helps illustrate the larger goals that Richfield has when it comes to waste reduction and sustainability.
Hi, Bev Mathieson with Republic Services. I just wanted to first thank council, mayor, and staff for this meeting. I think we all hear you very loud and clear. Pricing is important, environmental responsibility is important, and certainly reliability. And all of these things can be achieved through organized collections. So I'm super excited. We are excited about this process and taking a look at this. In terms of questions, I think because I've been involved in a lot of the conversations, I have a very good idea of what you're looking for and what you need. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is in terms of different languages. You said that Richfield has a large population of Spanish speaking, and I know a lot of the haulers have a lot of resources when it comes to Spanish translations, but what other languages or first languages what does that population look like for other languages in Richfield? Some ideas, you know, as we think forward to education, what does that look like?
I would have to look at more at our demographics to give you a better ranking of you know, percentages for our population. I wonder if either Mayor Reagan Gonzalez or City Manager Rodriguez could speak more to those higher groups, percentage groups in Richfield.
Mayor, I can jump in here. So we're on demand for Spanish, certainly, and we are moving towards providing more communication from the city in Spanish, and plan to for all of our organized collection engagement process. Also, growing need for Somali. So I would say that is the emerging language that we are getting requests for.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, and just more generally, if you look at, so the 2010 census says we have about 17% or so Latino community members, so that's pretty old and dated. If you look at our school district, we have 72% students of color, with 40% of those being Spanish speaking. Our Somali family base is growing. We also have the second largest Tibetan refugee community in Minnesota as well. And so we can get more up-to-date information. And I think pulling something between the census and with the school data will really help us get a much better idea of that. Other questions or comments from folks?
Yeah, this is Micah Hamster with Waste Management. I have a question regarding, I guess, the single entity structure that some cities have required in the past. You know, we've dealt with St. Paul and Bloomington, and I know that they wanted all the haulers to incorporate as a single entity, whereas other cities like St. Anthony haven't. And I mean, from a hauler perspective, the whole single entity concept's very complex with antitrust issues, and it doesn't really seem like it's contemplated by the statute. And I think the statute was recently amended to talk about haulers not being joint and severally liable for each other. So I guess I was just trying to gauge the city's expectations on that front. Do you guys plan on, are your expectations that a single entity is formed?
Thanks, Micah. I will defer to our city attorney, Mary Teachin, for this question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, I think you're correct on the statute. As far as what the city's preferences are, you know, I don't know that I've been involved in specific discussions with staff on that. But I think that will likely be part of the discussion going forward in the negotiation sessions. I don't know if staff, if you have more to add on that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think those are the kind of things that I'd like to explore during the negotiation. I'd like to hear again from the haulers and their perspective, and it sounds like that has been difficult for you. We have, of course, been talking to the other cities to get their perspective on it as well. But yeah, those details we're not yet to, but we are open to hearing your perspective and trying to be creative about the approach.
Good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is Julie Ketchum with Waste Management, and I just wanted to add to that discussion the simplicity of other organized collection systems. So, you know, I've been involved in these organized collection issues for 20 years, and some of those systems that have fewer haulers in particular have functioned very well without having a consortium. It's kind of a new thing, with Bloomington being one of the obvious one that's gotten a lot of attention over the years, and then St. Paul as well. I think the only other one in the state is Columbia Heights. It's an older system, but I would encourage the city to have some discussion with those cities that don't have a consortium and see what their experience has been.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions from folks? Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question for the haulers who have done this multiple times. Are there cities where collective hauling is working really well that you would lift up as examples of really cohesive collaboration and efficiency that we should look at and maybe be talking to?
St. Anthony was mentioned earlier, and I know that was a fairly easily negotiated organized collection process.
Yeah, and with St. Anthony, I mean, there is a single contract, just each hauler signed it individually on behalf of the hauler. You know, from a legal perspective, I don't really know operationally which ones work better. I've heard a lot of complaints on the Bloomington cleanup program there. I think they have some sort of spring cleanup that seems like a mess always from the hauler's perspective. I don't know if anybody on the operations side wants to speak to that.
Just as a note, if anyone is unaware, Ridgefield does not have a similar program to that citywide cleanup that Bloomington has. So.
Councilmember Whalen here. I will say though that would be really good to know from haulers' perspectives if that is kind of a logistical nightmare or other problems, because that is definitely something I have heard from many residents that they'd be interested in if it's possible and does not jack up prices. So would like to hear more if that is something that haulers would not recommend.
I can speak on behalf of Republic Services. Generally, a curbside cleanup program is far more complicated for the hauler. And also you have a lot of issues with illegal dumping with those types of events. So therefore, anytime we're talking to cities about a cleanup event, certainly a drop-off event is something that we prefer. It makes best sense and gives the resident the opportunity to get rid of a lot of their stuff legally, but it is more cost-effective and it is more efficient.
Thanks, Bev, and thank you, Councilmember Whalen. I did want to add that I believe in our climate action plan, we have noted as definitely a future goal, and perhaps as part of this discussion as well, the idea of having more of a drop-off style event. This also does take into account, any discussion about bulk item collection that was brought up previously. There's a lot of ways to achieve this goal, and finding a style that works best for Richfield. I don't think it'll be hard to do that.
This is Thor Nelson at Aspen. I have a quick question. Will the city be engaging any third-party consultants, or will it just be the haulers in the city working directly with each other?
Right now, it's going to be the city and the haulers. And if we feel we need to contract with an outside consultant, we will do so. But as of right now, we're hopeful that we can get it done. Just the city and the haulers.
Okay, thank you.
Add on to that, thanks for the question, Thor. Staff has done a lot of research into how other cities have gone through this process. And noticed that haulers have been, a consultant has been fairly common for several cities. We've also had discussions with, cities like St. Anthony Village, who have gone about the process a little differently. And like City Manager Rodriguez said before, we're really hoping that, yes, this roadmap has been established somewhat, but Richfield's all about trying to find, what about this process is going to work the best for the city and residents. And we think that, we've been preparing enough to kind of do it on our own right now. So.
other comments or questions from folks?
Yeah, I saw in one of the documents that was distributed by the city that there was talk of residents being able to share carts. And logistically, I was just trying to figure out how that would work with, the haulers giving up market share. If you don't know at that time, or if somebody changes their mind and they want to share in the future, how that really works logistically. Has there been any thought on that issue?
Thanks for the question, Micah. I think that this is definitely going to be one of those things that we have to dive into during negotiations. The reason that was specified on the document is because our city code does currently allow it, and we have had that feedback from residents, especially those who produce much less waste. So going through negotiations and figuring out how that might work in an organized system, especially with physical proximity, i.e., is it just neighbors sharing carts, to keep that market share, or to not make it cross different haulers or things like that. But as of this time, I don't think the city has really planned out all of the specifics for how that process might work.
Another question. Again, thanks for everyone's time here. I really appreciate it. As far as just the recycling, the single stream, have you thought of going to weekly, or is it every other week? What's your on that as well?
Thanks. That's a great question. I think that this is something that we would like to see how that pricing would work. I've noticed that neighboring cities have compared weekly rates to every other week rates, and their residents have decided to maintain the every other week collection. We've had some residents ask us about weekly collection, but I think for Richfield residents, it will probably come down to what that pricing might include. So really getting all of those possibilities to bring back to the community will probably make that decision. I also did want to put out there that if there are any documents or specific pieces of information that would help you as haulers throughout this process, specific data about the city, things like that, I would encourage you all to reach out to me as well, and we can try and help provide whatever documentation would be helpful as we go through this negotiation process.
I don't want to end early, but I want to make sure we have plenty of time for folks to ask questions, to discuss. This will help all of us, do better in the next steps moving forward. So this is a time for us to ask those questions. If not, I can just ask one more time and see if staff have any closing thoughts, and we can end early, but I'll just leave it open a little bit longer before we adjourn.
Yes, this is Julie Ketchum. I do have one more question, and that is whether you've had any recent discussions with Hennepin County on organics and availability or capacity at some of the organics facilities, so SET in particular, and whether that facility would be able to handle additional organics, and what the county is thinking actually at this point.
Yeah, that's a great question, Julie. I haven't had any recent conversations, and Hennepin County hasn't shared any of the most recent updates with city recycling coordinators about that. So I can reach out to Ben and also MPCA and see if there's anything's been happening on new site construction or anything like that. But as far as the last time that this topic was brought up, which was a few months ago, it was acknowledged that there will be a variety of cities coming online in various capacities, whether it's mandatory citywide collection or licensed just through a license, and then residents opt in. Like cities in a variety of formats are going to increase organics collection, and I think that was part of why stuff went down at Brooklyn Park with trying to get updates and things like that, and reducing contamination. So it seems to me that the county is aware of what different cities are planning on doing and how that would factor into capacity. I have not heard otherwise from them or the MPCA, but I can definitely check in and see how those sites are doing, especially SET's capacity. Currently, our drop-off sites in the city are hauled directly to SET, not to Brooklyn Park, and I haven't heard anything about needing to stop or they're getting full or anything like that. So hoping it works out.
So we haul both through Brooklyn Park, but also from the south. It is direct haul to SET. So yes, from our standpoint, we are doing everything we can to reduce the contamination in the organic stream, but part of it is related to limited compost pad capacity. So is the city of Richfield, are you looking at an opt-in where the amount of material would be less than with a more of a mandatory or service already provided through contract?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think Councilmember-elect Hayford O'Leary kind of touched on this briefly. Obviously, with a more of a mandatory program where the charge is included in a base service charge, it makes it more financially viable for residents to participate in curbside organics, and it provides that incentive to participate. If we did have a fully opt-in program, there are several. The city sees a few downsides to that financially and environmentally, and just with the lower amount of organics that would be separated. I understand, with capacity, obviously it's harder to have every city who wants to have curbside organics just do mandatory. And with contamination, we've had incredibly great participation and incredibly low contamination in our drop-off program, which is obviously it's not a mandatory program, so you would expect to see less contamination. But education for that program has gone really well, and it's not just with the early adopters. We've had people who do that program who had no idea what a compostable material was, like what food they should be separating, if bones were okay, all of those things. So we've had really great education already in the city, and it's kind of it's been a great, hopefully a good forecast of how a more citywide program could go. It'll be interesting to see. I believe SMSC is expanding their site, so if they expand, what sort of capacity the area might have for collecting organics. But yeah, I understand that there are a lot of considerations to go into this program.
This is Micah again. Sorry. But as a city, I think in St. Paul, the city bought the carts and then imposed a administrative fee on the bill for the residents, where intended to kind of compensate them, the city, throughout the duration of the contract. And I believe Bloomington has a hauler supply their own cart. It has the city considered buying carts, or yeah, if that's a question.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Micah. I don't think that we are interested in buying carts. I think we'd first like to pursue the hauler providing the cart and absorbing any cost there throughout the billing cycles.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So would that be a new cart purchase, or can we continue using the carts we have?
Thanks, Julie. I think this is not a specific detail that we've talked about as staff, so I don't want to confirm, this is the city's official stance. But as far as I think staff are concerned, we are not going to be requiring new carts. Obviously, if existing carts are damaged, that might be a different conversation. But we're not going to be requiring any special branding or stickering or anything like that would require new carts.
It would be really helpful if the haulers sent us all these questions, these details, because as we go through negotiations, the more that we can discuss and provide parameters of choices for you all during that process, the better. So if you can send all of these to Rachel ahead of our negotiations, I know that we'll get into negotiations and there'll be more, but as much as you can, that would be really helpful.
All right, any last questions or comments from folks? All right, staff and council, are you guys fine with us adjourning 45 minutes early and giving folks back some time today? I'll ask one more time, any questions or comments from folks? All right, well, we greatly appreciate
I think Rocky had something to say.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Rocky.
Not me, Rachel. I just wanted to thank you for inviting the little guys. I know we're the smallest of the groups out here, but I just really appreciate you letting us come in on this discussion. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, we thank all of you for participating in our meeting today. As the city manager said, if we are taking notes and we have a lot of these questions from this meeting written down, but if there's more questions or comments that you want to share, please do send them our way so we can make sure to prepare and give as much direction and options and guidance as possible. And we really look forward to continuing our work with you on this process in service to our Richfield residents. Thank you, everyone, and maybe take a little time for self-care in these next 45 minutes that you get back, because I'm sure you don't have enough time for yourself. So have a great day. Thank you.